it's been what, a couple of days now? Is it all right? Is it acceptable to come out and finally admit that Starfield was not a very good video game? That it's filled with glitches, that the pacing is terrible, the general gameplay loop is terrible, the engine is terrible, the mechanics are terrible, the writing is terrible, the character models are terrible, the visuals are terrible, gunplay, the variety. Like, this is a complete disaster in every way, shape, and form. And as of right now, in spite of a handful of like middling review scores, nobody really wants to admit it. Everybody like bent over backwards trying to pretend that Tears of the Kingdom was a disappointment and one of the worst games ever made. But like when Starfield comes out, is objectively a complete disaster, an abject failure in every way, shape, and form. This is a mod of Skyrim, essentially. Like when this game comes out, it is as underwhelming, as disappointing, and as boring as it is. Why exactly is there not fan outrage? Where exactly is the backlash? Where exactly is the controversy? Why aren't people refunding this game en masse? Selling their Xboxes, ending their Xbox Game Pass subscriptions, buying Nintendo Switch, like getting away from Bethesda and their nonsense because it didn't take a genius to predict that this would happen, right? I told you guys over and over again going into this game isn't going to be that great. It's going to be underwhelming. It's going to have, Todd lied about everything. There were all these red flags, all these situations, all these issues, right? There were all these problems with this game that nobody wanted to talk about or address at all. All anybody wanted to do was just pretend, leading up to release, that this was a game of the year contender, that this was going to be a system seller for Xbox, that this was going to be the game that put Bethesda back on the map, that made them great, that really showed Nintendo who's boss, like proved that Bethesda could still put out good, high quality, open world RPG content. Like this was going to be the next evolution of that genre. This was going to leave everything else in the dust. Like Bethesda was going to bring forth the next generation in video games, right? This was going to be one of the best games ever made. And what happens? It comes out, nobody cares for it. Everybody's just kind of playing through it because they don't do anything else. They have no hobbies. They have no interests. They don't play better games, there are like dozens of examples this year alone. They don't read. They don't have any like real lives. All they do is just wait for the next major video game announcement, like next video game to come out, and then they'll just play that, in spite of the fact these games have stopped being good a long time ago, right? Like, there is no defending the decline in quality from Bethesda, but nobody wants to admit it. Like, how exactly can a company put out something as broken and as unfinished as Fallout 4 and seriously not have people just stop supporting the company? Like, why was that not like the moment that people realized that like Bethesda had jumped the shark? Fallout 4, or for that matter, Fallout 3, which in and of itself was not disappointing. Like, I remember when people said Fallout 3 was like one of the best games ever made, right? Like, unlike Starfield, that game did get the critical acclaim. It did get the sales. It did get the hype cycle, right? That game was a major milestone for downplaying Nintendo Wii games around that time, right? Right, that was a big thing at the time, right? Alongside like BioShock and Mass Effect and stuff like that. Like that was one of those games, Oblivion. Like that was one of those games that like everybody said was like, wow, Nintendo could never put out something like this. Nintendo is doomed for sure. Like, look at these open environments with nothing to do. Oh, I'll never get tired of walking the Capital Wasteland. Like, and like, what happened? People did get tired of it. People did realize that Fallout 3 had problems. People did realize that Bethesda had completely screwed the pooch, right? And nobody really wants to admit it. Like, nobody wants to admit that there are better games out there from better developers, Japanese developers. Like, nobody wants to admit that there's a serious problem with the gaming industry, with like the hype cycle, and with the tradition, like Starfield came out this week. Like, what did I do instead? I was doing stuff. I was writing. I was reading One Piece. I was playing Advance Wars, Hollow Knight, um, countless other games. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, which is still better than anything Bethesda ever put out. Like, I was playing real stuff. Real high quality product, like far beyond anything that non Nintendo gamers have ever played. And it's just like, why exactly do we have to do this every time? Like, why exactly do I have to tell you that like Starfield isn't going to be good? And then like have my opinion be validated, and then like have everyone just move on to the next thing. And that is what's happening right now. Is that like all anybody's doing is getting excited for the next thing. And right now, I don't think there's really anything this year that like people can fall back on. Like, I think what people are going to do this year is like pretend that they're just going to like replay Baldur's Gate 3 over and over and over again, and like, yeah, get to like every possible like sexual degenerate like situation they possibly can. Like, they're going to do everything they can to try and like ignore the obvious that like starting uh in October, like it's gonna be a nonstop barrage of great Nintendo Switch games. You have Detective Pikachu, you have Super Mario Bros. Wonder, you have Metal Gear Solid Master Collection, you have like Super Mario RPG, you have like so many cool things. Dragon Quest Monsters is coming out in December. Another Dragon Quest game is coming out in September. Like, you have like a lot of great upcoming games. Like, I should have had to stop like cancel a lot of my pre-orders for stuff I didn't think I was all that interested in. Stuff like Mortal Kombat 1 and Super Bomberman R. Like, when would I have time to play all these great Nintendo Switch games? But what it amounts to in this right now is that Switch is still dominating. Switch is stomping these big AAA games with these that have like the full support of like the corrupt gaming journalism industry. They have like the overpowered console hardware. They have full modding support. They have Game Pass, and like they still can't like come close to what Nintendo is doing, right? Like, I imagine a big part of why Starfield is failing and it is failing is because of the Game Pass thing. A service that is losing Microsoft billions of dollars every year is most people are just downloading on Game Pass, realizing the game is shit, and then just stop playing, right? That is the life cycle of this game, right? It's no different than Yakuza or Hollow Knight or any of these other games that like come out on Game Pass that doesn't appeal to like the Call of Duty playing, like chronic masturbating, like just soy boy gamer cuck, right? Like, the this is the reality of modern gaming, is that like real gamers are playing classic games. They are playing like games in niche genres. They are experimenting with with old games they've never heard of before. They are constantly finding new high quality brands from developers they never heard of. Whether it's like Intelligent Systems or Falcom or like Platinum Games or like anybody really, right? There are so many great developers out there putting out high quality content that like I never even considered buying Starfield, because I can tell you there are dozens of better alternatives out there that make that make the idea of Starfield completely pointless, right? I was not surprised to see this game fail the way it has. I've been speaking out about it for a long time. Nobody believed me because they never do. Like, oh man, Harlan Smith, he's just a Nintendo fanboy. It's not like he has a high-end PC that he can play all these games day one if he wanted to. No, he's just a Nintendo fan. Oh, he doesn't own these better pieces of hardware, and that's why he's so delusional about this. No, the reality is that like being a connoisseur of gaming, I've played everything. I have a very thorough understanding of the industry and what's out there and what's available. And I found that the opposite is true, is that the people who like praise Starfield, who worship Starfield, like these are the people who don't play the Nintendo games. who don't play stuff like Cereza and the Lost Demon, like Fire Emblem Engage, like Advance Wars 1 and 2 Reboot Camp, like Tears of the Kingdom, like Pikmin 4, like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, coming this October, next month. Like these are really great, hard-hitting, wonderful games that these soy boys will never even consider playing. They would much rather get hyped for and then be disappointed by Todd Howard's next big lie.